Hello, everyone. Welcome to Winthrop and the World. I'm Paul Baskin, and with us today is Pat Costigan. Pat is a town council member here in Winthrop, Precinct 1.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that's what's right sort of in the center of town.
It is, dead center.
Yeah, dead center of town. So one of the things we want to talk about, we've talked about with a lot of the town council members, is 3A, which is the housing issue in town. It's a state law that called the MBTA Communities Act that basically requires the towns around Boston to add a little zoning, or a lot, maybe zoning in some cases, to basically help with housing in the area, and also to do it in a way that encourages transit. Just generally, can you tell us where you are on that whole question?
Well, I mean, you've been at many council meetings, Paul, and with regards to my stance on 3A, right from the get-go, and again, I've been in the town council now for about 9 months, a newbie, so to speak. But again, this issue was prevalent before I even joined the council. I'm a lifelong Winthrop resident, and as it relates to 3A, seeing the banter back and forth, the no and the yes, and so forth, so on, the developers against the townspeople, so to speak. If you look at the original bill that was formulated by the Baker administration in the shadows of COVID,
okay,
has no affordability in it. No tenant rights, and there's no sealing of records as far as evictions are concerned. That was those were all vetoed towards the latter part of that bill itself. I believe it was done at 11 p.m. Under the deadline as well. So I'm suspect there. With regards to Winthrop in general, I mean, we are one of the densest towns in the Commonwealth, and as you know, at the meetings, I am fully in favor of a 100% exemption based upon our uniqueness as a town, our population, our airport that's in close proximity. We have the Mass Water Resource Authority treatment facility, second largest in the country. We have the main commerce route coming through the town. My question is, how much can we sustain in this town as a community and still preserve that nice little town feel? So again, being a lifelong Winthrop resident, those are big concerns of mine, and I do have a lot of concerns as it relates to the state and their approaching this, or I don't want to use the word forcing, but maybe forcing this on 177 communities without really any credibility to the congestion or any of the problems that a small town like Winthrop is currently under. I mean, so we are a very unique town. I know there's some comparison to Hull, there's some comparison to Nahant. Night and day, Nahant and Hull do not have the density, so to speak, 4-to-1 ratio as far as Winthrop over those two communities, let alone the commerce. We are close proximity to Boston, the congestion, as you know, the concerns with regards to safety, the evacuation. And I have to say, our fire department, Chief Wiley, has done a great job at sort of reassuring the public that there is a plan in place, and I am confident that that is the case. And again, we're going to rely upon our professionals, police and fire, and town professionals to make sure that the town is safe. That's where we are right now. But this 3A will, I believe, burden our infrastructure, let alone our schools, as you know.
Okay, so a lot in there. So
there is a tremendous amount.
You took us from 3A to, I guess, evacuations and congestion, and I would like to try and get through a
it's
good
all
bit
relative.
of that.
Yes.
First of all, you understand, and I know you know this because you've been through the town council debates, which
Yes.
is that there's this talk that Winthrop is deserving of an exemption, but the planning board has come up with a plan that essentially creates that exemption in a lot of people's minds by simply rezoning parts of this town that already have dense housing. And that's, if we do that, it's said that that's all we need to do. Why is that not sufficient in your mind?
I mean, it seems simple on paper as far as the laydown area in which Seal Harbor, we have, the Center Business District is my biggest concern, but you also have Governor's Park. The people who live in these communities, especially Seal Harbor, that area there, as I think previous councilors have stated, that the shall comply as it relates to the ability to divide these condos in Seal Harbor. As much as people say that will never happen, there is nothing in writing that is going to satisfy those people who live in those areas to then believe that the state is actually going to abide by their word. So, you know yourself, everything that's a legal document itself is always done in paper. Maybe if the state can come through with a piece of paper on letterhead to say, hey, listen, Seal Harbor residents, you know, the CBD area as well, your businesses will be able to remain. There's a lot here that's open-ended. And again, nothing is in paper to solidify the agreement with the state as it relates to 3A. It's somewhat open-ended, and I think that's the fear where there's a lack of trust with the state here as it relates to 3A.
So I've heard this subdivision issue. I mean, there's a lot of issues you wrapped in there, but I mean the subdivision issue. So there's now, right now, you're saying if you have a 3-bedroom apartment in Seal Harbor, you are prohibited from subdividing it into a smaller unit, and that under the 3A law you somehow would be able to. Is that what you're suggesting?
My understanding is if a tenant, should we say, if a condo owner
Right.
sold that condo to somebody,
Right.
they would, under the 3A language, be able to come in and actually, if it's a 3-bedroom, put potentially 3 couples in that one unit itself, and possibly subdivide that condo unit depending upon how large it is.
How would that even look if you have a doorway in the hallway going into a building? Then how would you even subdivide it? How would that even work?
Well, I would say if there's a way to make more money, the developers are going to find that.
And so you're saying that that's now prohibited, and somehow 3A comes in and says that you have the right to subdivide your house?
You would be able to do that under 3A. Same thing with Governor's Park. As it is, those units down there a lot of them are being subdivided as we speak, I believe.
But if it's happening already, then that would suggest, therefore, that 3A is not driving that.
Well, you have to ask the question: is that right, and what is that going to do to the town?
Well, you can ask that question, but the question is whether it's already allowed, then that's not a 3A issue, right?
You're not able to subdivide in Seal Harbor or.
I thought, didn't you just say it's already happening?
No, it's been rumored to be happening.
It's been rumored to be happening.
So rumored to be happening. So.
Rumored to be happening. Okay.
Yes.
So the concern is the rumor to be happening. Okay. And just as a general principle, do you understand that the state has a right to say to a town, any town, that we are giving you state aid, and in return for state aid, we are asking this, that, and the other thing. This is something the voters of the Commonwealth have collectively decided they want to do, and they say to the town, well, you don't have to do this. You can just, but we then have a right, therefore, to not provide a certain amount of state aid. Is that generally a reasonable principle?
Well, let's look at it. That has been the fight, is that the state, and again, the state supersedes every community. We understand that. But you have 30-some-odd communities who are in the same mindset as the town of Winthrop. And yes, there are battles and struggles here. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, I am 100% behind a full exemption. It's the exemption we want as community. We are different from all, but to your point, as far as the other communities, whether it's Milton or South Shore, North Shore, wherever it may be, they are unique in their way as well. But they have plenty of land, and their congestion issues are somewhat much less than where we are right now.
But again, the law provides for Winthrop not to have to be a building anymore. It's simply by rezoning the areas that already are built up. That's the point I think people are trying to say, which is, yes, we're not those other towns, but that's why we don't actually have to rezone anything other than as it affects properties that already are built up like that.
And yes, that's been the proposal by the planning board that with Seal Harbor and with Governor's Park, that constitutes 600 and some odd units. Then we get down to the CBD.
Yeah,
now the CBD.
It was CBD for people. You're talking about the central
Center Business District. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that area itself, we're getting credit of 220, 222, whatever it might be. But if you've looked at, and some of my other concerns as it relates to the Center Business District, is that, whereas we're getting credit for that, does that entitle the developer to now go in and, develop that area up to 4 stories? Currently it does. It does, and I think that to be a major issue as it relates to the size of structure in the Center Business District. And on top of that, I mean, currently we have an issue in town as it relates to vehicles. By special permit is when they will allow you can buy out a vehicle under a current contract for $20,000, and that basically makes that.
So when you say buy out a vehicle, you're talking about the requirement for parking? Is that what you're getting at?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so let's get to that. But first of all, if you're saying that the current zoning in Winthrop already allows in the central business district 4-story buildings,
It is my belief it does, yes.
then what does 3A do differently then? That's a problem.
Well, 3A, under 3A, I believe, this is just my belief, if 3A does come in, basically Winthrop as we know it will be changed. As it stands right now, 500 to 900 units are already somewhat being discussed and in play to be built here in town. With 222, do you think the developers are going to stop at 222 down the Center Business District?
I don't know, but there's already the right to go to this level of 4 stories. So what is 3A doing differently then?
Well, I believe 3A, if 3A does come in, the ability for us to possibly rezone that area and maybe bring it down to 2.5 stories
I see. So
is going to be very limited. Once 3A is approved, if it is in this town, I believe it to be game over as far as the Center Business District.
So you're saying is that the town already has the zoning allows this. And what 3A would do is keep it at that level. So because what you would like is a future in which we reduce that capability.
Absolutely. Center Business District to have 4-story buildings outlining, and again, it's not going to be tomorrow, may not be 5 years from now, but 10, 15, 20 years from now, with a 4-story height elevation in the center, that's going to be one cold wind tunnel, let alone you have people who are complaining already that there's just too much or too less down the center now. We have to encourage businesses to come into the fold down there, and under 3A as well. That hasn't even been talked about with regards to businesses are required to be placed on the first floor. If you have 9 businesses in one building and you have a development that goes up, right. Is it one business that goes down at the bottom, or is it the 9 that were previously occupying that space? So there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered here. And if you look at the Somerset property as it stands now, okay. There I believe to be a lawyer's office in there along with a mail room. And, there were 3 businesses there at one time. CVS, the TV store itself, and then there was another one, I can't recall. It was so long ago. But we have to be concerned about that. We want it to be friendly, a walkable Center Business District.
Sorry, but is the demand already there? I mean, you're talking about potentially this concern about developers coming in and massively adding to the size of the central business district. Is there the business demand for that already? I mean, if there's no demand for that, then what's the major concern here?
As far as a demand for that, the bottom line is that you will have corporate development coming in, and again, 1, 2-bedroom, maybe single bedroom, whatever it might be. Just look at that 4-story structure right now. And again, my fear is that the businesses in the Center Business District right. will disappear to make way for all residential all residences down there, as opposed. So the small businesses that are down there now, again, we should be developing that in a business frame of mind as opposed to a residential frame of mind.
And you're suggesting the businesses would not like to have a whole lot of people living right around there who could be their customers? That would not be something the business would want?
Well, it would be nice, but 4 stories I think is just a little bit of a fetch. 4 stories, if it's going to be one cold wind tunnel in the center in that area. And again, it's going up 2 stories alone, let alone 3, is going to shadow a lot of that area, let alone one of the biggest issues I have a concern for. Right. And again, when the Somerset property was developed,
the Somerset property is where exactly, so people know?
It's right across from the Book Depot.
Okay.
And that's 4 stories. After that was developed, there was a restriction zone put alongside that, the opposite side of that curbing, for the fire departments to access the 4th floor.
Right.
So if you have 4-story buildings encompassing that entire outlay of the Center Business District, right. all of those parking areas, if under the current situation and the development, will be restrictive zones. So again, these are questions that have to be answered as we go forward.
Wouldn't that be potentially a positive situation in which, because you were talking about congestion, and when you were talking about congestion, I assume you're referring to car congestion.
Correct.
Right. So wouldn't that then be a positive direction to go, which would be have people living closer together, therefore you could have maybe bus service going, which we already do, go right in there, and therefore you don't need those parking spaces, and it makes it a more walkable, more human-friendly environment.
That would be nice under the most perfect conditions, but again, we have safety issues as far as the height of those buildings, and with regards to the potential or the availability of developers to buy out a vehicle as opposed to two, only one. You know, that sets up an issue as far as where do these additional vehicles park if these people do have vehicles?
Well, what if they don't have vehicles and that, because isn't the problem that you're referencing in terms of congestion that there's too many vehicles and therefore a situation would actually have fewer vehicles would be a net positive for the community?
If we had fewer vehicles, absolutely. But again, as it stands right now, you're able to purchase should we say, buy a vehicle out of the overall development plan for
Right.
$20,000.
Right, and wouldn't that be a good thing to have less vehicles and therefore you have less congestion? in
Well,
town?
no, you could still have that vehicle. Where does that one vehicle park if you're going to buy that out? If a person has two. If a person has two vehicles per unit,
Right.
where does that second vehicle then park in the town of Winthrop?
You're suggesting 2 vehicles per person?
I believe as it stands, it's 2 cars per development, correct?
I don't know, but I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking about reducing the number, and I'm asking you why that wouldn't be a net positive because we'd have fewer vehicles around, and therefore you wouldn't need to park it somewhere else. You just wouldn't have it.
And-
you would have service that would take you right to Orient Heights or right to wherever you want to get to.
And that would be the most perfect situation. But with regards to the ability to, in other words, if I went in there with 2 vehicles and I was the developer, 2 vehicles were allowed as it stands right now.
Right.
1 vehicle can be parked underneath the development,
Right.
which is the case right now in Somerset.
Right.
But if the person has a second vehicle,
Right.
where is that vehicle going, is my question.
Well, if they do, but isn't that the way the free market works, is that under the free market you don't force people to do things and therefore they decide, well, maybe I just don't want the vehicle and therefore it doesn't make sense for me to have it.
Under a perfect situation, absolutely. But right now there are no restrictions to limit the amount of vehicles under development in the town.
Okay. So I just want to say, I would remind people, with us today is Pat Costigan, Town Council member here. I should have mentioned too, you work at MWRA, right? Here in town, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and is MWRA, I realize you don't want to say too much because you work for there, but I mean, as a general principle, is it a positive, do you feel it's a positive part of our community to have Deer Island and everything that goes around with it?
I believe it is. I mean, the employment issue itself, there's close to 100, if not more than 100 Winthrop residents who work for the Mass Water Resource Authority.
Yeah.
They are a good neighbor. They've been a great neighbor. They do compensate the town for the inconveniences. And again, whatever side you may be on as it relates to the conditions in which we're put under by this wastewater treatment plant, the MWA, or even Massport in this case, is of issue and difference to people. The people on Point Shirley have a much, much different view from myself over in Belcher Street.
Right.
So again, it's all in who you talk to, really. But they have been a good neighbor. It would be wrong to say that they haven't. They've been a good neighbor to us. They employ a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay, that's fine. So we're spending a lot of time on housing, but it's a big topic in town too. I know you've kind of been one of the more outspoken people on the topic, so it's maybe want to spend a little more, even more with you on that. You made a comment at the very beginning that suggested that the whole 3A housing debate is a debate between the people in town and the developers. I mean, do you really see it that way? Is it that the people that the developers, that the people in town, so to speak, are opposed to 3A, and that the developers are the party that are pushing it, and there's no kind of mix in there?
Well, a good question. I think it all goes back to, again, the trust with the state. Whether it's Baker getting this bill through the last minute, you have to also realize that there's a lot of politicians within the Commonwealth here who are backed by big realty, corporate realtors.
Right.
Let's face it there. And they talk about the lack of affordable housing. I mean, how ironic that this bill itself doesn't even require affordability. So I'm somewhat confused.
Well, would you like it to?
Would love it to. Love it to have
3A,
affordability.
So 3A was essentially the way it is, but in addition, it had an affordability component for the housing. You'd be a supporter of 3A?
Well, that amongst maybe a couple of other issues as it relates to the effects of each community on a case-by-case basis. Again, Winthrop being very, very unique than any other out of the 351 communities. So again, case by case basis. And again, I still think the town of Winthrop should be fully exempt with no penalties against it.
Right, I understand. No, I understand. And the planning board's plan, in a lot of people's minds, basically recognizes that fact by giving the town credit for the zone, for the housing it already has. And that's the debate that's been going on, and I hear that. I'm maybe just trying to understand too, back on the question of congestion, do you feel that something, what needs, I guess maybe that's what I asked, what needs to be done about it? Because people complain about, I mean, driving around Winthrop maybe isn't that difficult, but getting in and out is, and then using a car beyond it is. What do you see as sort of the big picture solution to that problem?
Well, I mean, I think we're at a breaking point right now, I believe, and I think if you talk to other councilors, we are heavily congested, and it is a major concern as it relates to safety, the safety of those in town. Right. With regards to, I mean, last month we had a telephone pole go across McClellan Highway, right. 2 lanes, for a full day.
Okay.
Somebody I know from the Golden Drive locale took 45 minutes to get up to the Orion Heights station alone. So, under an actual emergency where, God forbid, we have aircraft that lands here inadvertently from Logan,
right.
As has been the case in several locations around the globe. Yeah. But on top of that, the commerce route that comes through the town itself, if that affects the public as well, and again, I have the full trust of the fire chief and all of the professionals in this town to make sure they're looking after our best interest. But we have to be cognizant of those issues that may affect us and how they're going to affect us. And right now, as it stands, especially, I mean, climate change and everything else with that Short Beach area, if that's closed, I mean, it's 45 minutes just to get out on that typical day. So now add something up at McClellan Highway along with a closure of Short Beach, right. And I mean, how long is that going to take?
So what do you see as the solution to that?
Well, again, I am on the Climate Action Committee for the town, along with the Councilor DeRoss, and again, a lot of great presentations by a lot of agencies to our group. And I do like, and I think you may have mentioned it in some previous TV discussions here, with regards to an elevated roadway going out of town.
Right. You're talking about, so that would be parallel, that's the one parallel to Saratoga going toward Orion Heights.
Well, that's the old trestle. That's the
right.
old trestle stop.
Right.
That's going to take a tremendous amount of money, as the bridge at Short Beach, the alternative to go over the water as opposed to, at sea level on the current roadway.
Right. The Climate Commission's been talking about that, yes, but
Correct.
They've also said that the cost of that makes that seem prohibitive.
It does, and under the current administration, I mean, I think we're in for some belt tightening. So
then what is the solution then to the congestion? Because the studies always show that the more you widen lanes, it just induces more driving. So if that's the reality, what then is the solution?
Well, it brings me back to point one. The solution is, first off, not to overly condense Winthrop with 3A. That's one solution right there. That's step one. We are building. We have not gotten credit from the state for previous building. We have 500 units right now shovel ready, and
right.
They're going up. It potentially could be 900.
Right.
And that's going to add to the community as it is. And as much as people say, well, 3A is not going to add to it, there's this old adage, you give them a foot, they'll take a yard. I think if 3A is approved in this town, it's just my opinion,
right.
is that it is going to be open season to develop everything in this town. As much as we may have a planning board and an oversight committee and a licensing board, I think it's just going to give the green light. If you think about it, do you know what the first area circled in Winthrop was by the state?
Circled by, for what purpose?
For 3A. Well, when they initiated the initial plan itself, the area that was designated 3A under their eyes.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I'm not sure it matters because we were allowed to choose what we wanted, but go ahead, what was the...
Correct. It was the entire length of Winthrop Beach.
The entire length of Winthrop Beach.
So that's waterfront property, heavily sought after by corporate developers, and again, that's where you get the most bang for your buck as far as profitability.
Right, but that's not the plan that we're looking at right now.
No, it's not.
And the state is not requiring us to do it there. In the housing, as you're talking about, is already going up. It's already essentially meeting demand, market demand, as it is, regardless of what 3A is doing. I mean, so I'm trying to understand what the concern is if even without 3A, we're already seeing the market tell us what it wants, essentially. And that's happening anyway, right?
Well, but I think you have to be suspect, even on a national level. You have RealPage controlling the algorithm for renters and corporate developers. Basically, it's a consortium of all of the, you buy into it. And they tell you, depending upon the district and part of the Americas you are in, what you can actually charge. And you're not supposed to deviate from that charge.
What you can charge for what?
Rent.
For rent, okay.
If you're part of that organization.
And the point you're making with that is what? That's somehow driving.
It is keeping
demand?
rents up. Yes.
Right. And wouldn't the solution to high rents be to have more housing?
That's it's only maybe been proven in 4 areas of the entire country. As it relates to more develop. What we need more affordable housing,
right,
and building of affordable housing. We're down 4 to 5 million homes in this country. The houses that are being built are being built for those who are on the upper economic scale,
right,
and not the people who really need them. I know of a woman and a grandson right now on Veterans Road,
okay,
who are and will be evicted by April 2nd.
Right.
She's been in that apartment now for 50 years, and they don't know where they're going to go. It's a travesty.
So I hear you on that, and I'm curious. So just to revisit then, so if the governor called up the town council today and said, look, we'll add more affordable housing requirement to Winthrop, and then you would say yes to it, because it seems like that would be even more of the state telling us what to do. I'm not sure. I mean,
well, I believe we already have the housing that in that we could make more of it affordable. I mean,
couldn't the town? I guess that's something I ask it. Couldn't the town council just say, okay, yes, 3A, but then we're going to add an affordable housing component to it? There's nothing about 3A that prevents us from doing that, is
well, Winthrop already exceeds the affordability as far as any other town or city in the state.
Okay.
We're up well over 2%, and I think the average somewhere 1.4. I could be, somebody correct me on that. I'm sure somebody will, but we exceed the state level of affordability in this town.
Okay, but what you were talking about, though, was the problem is we need more of it. And so I'm asking
Correct.
you, is there anything that prevents the town council from just taking 3A and adding to it its own affordability requirement?
No, I'd like to see what's currently in the town of Winthrop has become affordable.
So
I'm going to take us out of Winthrop for a moment here and take us to Revere.
Okay.
And again, I don't know if you read the Revere papers at all. You have the people now in Revere up in arms over the ADUs.
Okay.
Now all of a sudden they've given in to 3A.
Right.
And now they're finding out shall by right,
Right.
have to now accept ADUs, and they are outraged.
Well, that's a statewide requirement, isn't it?
Correct it is.
So
And
it applies to Winthrop as well, right?
it does, that's correct.
And would that not be a move toward affordability? I mean, the people you were talking about on was it Veterans Road, you said? I mean, wouldn't they be helped if there were more ADUs around town?
Well, again, it would be probably have to be some type of, at least for this grandmother and her grandson, have to be an affordable, probably a state financed welfare state as far as the housing, affordable housing under the state.
Right.
A compensation for to make it affordable.
So are you thinking of maybe proposing to your fellow members of the town council that there be an affordable housing requirement brought into the town?
Well, we already established a committee. The committee's already been established, Affordable Housing Committee, which I hope they do some great work. Right. Again, there's plenty of housing in this town right now as it relates to affordable. But I think putting Winthrop in the light of needing to put 3A on top of us because it's an affordable housing issue, I think doesn't hold any water. Okay. The affordability issue is not instituted in the 3A legislation itself. Right. So if they really cared about affordable housing, they would have put that in there instead of vetoed it last minute. Okay. And again, the developers, the profitability now without an affordable provision in there is basically an open checkbook for the developers. And by the way, most of these developers are hedge funds and private equity firms coming out of Wall Street.
But again, I think you made clear, though, there's nothing that prevents the town from adding its own affordability requirement to the housing situation, right? So the town council, you could propose that to the town council, right? Or am I missing something?
Absolutely could.
Okay.
Absolutely could.
What is this? I mean, we're almost out of time, Councilmember Costigan. But just the overall state of the town's budget. We're coming up on a override vote for the schools. We're coming up a vote for the fire station. We've got, from the Climate Commission that there's lots of potential costs coming to the town for climate-related issues. Is the town budget stable now and looking into the immediate future?
As we say in the council all the time, it would be nice if this town was flush with money. This town is very limited, 6% commercial, what's our budget, somewhere around 60 million or so. Majority of that going to the schools. The town, I mean, and surprise, surprise, this is nothing new to the town as far as all of these issues that we're facing right now.
Right.
Yes, climate change, that has increased over the decades, et cetera.
Right.
The schools, if you look at the MWA mitigation money from 1992 to 2002, a 10-year package, $24 million, $2.4 million every year for 10 years.
Okay.
I think we could have really gained tremendously if that money was spent more wisely.
Okay.
Think about it, 1997, a new firehouse would have been somewhere around $4 million.
Right.
And here we are, 30 years later, talking about having to put a new firehouse in
Right.
with a debt exclusion.
Right.
Let alone the schools. I mean, the taxes were kept low during that tenure.
Right.
And here we are looking for money to keep the schools afloat, when in fact our taxes probably would have been 20% higher, which will have easily been able to fund the schools as we go along. I mean, there's a lot of other issues here that play into part as it relates to federal and state monies drying up over the years as well. And Prop 2.5 being the biggest.
Yeah.
To limit the schools. But
which is the state law that limits us to a 2.5% a year increase in property taxes.
Correct.
But I just, you're talking about the past, and that's important to know where we're going forward. But just as a general principle, are you confident or comfortable that the town budget looks fairly healthy going forward, or do you see sort of a fundamental mismatch between what we need and what we can afford?
Well, we're always going to need more money. I mean, really, millions of dollars are going to be needed for the climate action as it relates to, Pico, Girdlestone, Morton Street,
You're talking about the parts of town where the waters are rising fastest.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
I
Correct.
see, yes.
But you have to remember that, it's the infrastructure in this town. I don't want to use the word neglect, but it may have been overlooked for quite some time. And it's nothing, I'm not saying anything negative against our DPW. The director does a tremendous job, as does every other municipality department in this town. But we are on limited budgets, and that's really what restricts our ability to do so.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Director Calla would love to tackle everything.
DPW director.
That's the DPW, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Director in town would love to tackle all of these issues that really are a thorn in his side. I mean, he is limited to what he can do, as are other department heads as well. So, yes, money is the issue, but if, and just to bounce off of 3A once again, if you look at the grant money this town has received over a 10-year period, it's somewhere around, say, 2.5 million or so over 10 years.
Okay.
And 1 year alone, I think it was 2.1 that was secured by, I believe, Speaker DeLeo.
Right.
So we have to ramp up our game when it comes to grant writing.
Right.
And currently, I don't know where we stand with that.
But if we reject 3A, that's going to get worse, right?
Well, if we're not writing grants as it stands right now, and again, I'm going to say 100% exemption. I just want to be clear there. 3A, whether it passes or not, or however it turns out, yes, will it affect us monetarily as far as the funds coming into town? Currently, I think there's 4, and the state can add, God knows, maybe 20 more. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But again, unique, the town of Winthrop being unique in such a sense that we should be exempt. I would hope that the state takes us into consideration as far as a unique town and gives us that exemption. The fighting within town, the yes, the no, the budget, the money, the schools, the firehouse. This has all come to a head. The chickens have come home to roost as a result of decades of kicking it down the road. And I'm not faulting any past elected official or department head, but we are facing it now, and again, it's a perfect storm. We have the federal government, we have the current president, who, if you look at some of the proposals of late, I wouldn't hold my breath for any federal funds as it relates to climate change.
Right.
And a lot of other things, education. We have to do it alone. I hate to say it. I'm a realist, and you know, we have to, if you want to say we have to pull up our bootstraps, individual ruggedness is where we're going. And again, we have to dig in and we have to fight.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. I think, yes, Council, we have with us today is Council Member Pat Costigan. Thank you very much for your time today.
thank you, Paul. Appreciate your program.
Thank you.